By the way, ladies and gentlemen, not to burst your bubble, but for the Alfred Hitchcock fans that are listening to this podcast, you've been told the biggest lie in the history of critical thought. Vertigo or Psycho are not the best Alfred Hitchcock movies. For anybody with half a brain, which I have one, and I've gotten into much trouble about this over the years, I think Rear Window is not only the best Hitchcock movie of its kind, it is the best movie of its genre. I'm going to give you multiple reasons why in this podcast, and you can take it with a grain of salt or not. Now, what I really love about Rear Window, I first saw it when I was, I think, 8 years old on something called Midday Matinee on what was ATV in the Maritimes, which is now CTV Atlantic. Now, this is a 1954 American Technicolor mystery thriller. It stretches in the film noir, but the elements of thriller really overcome the elements of film noir because there's not really a femme fatale. Actually, the the lead actress in the movie puts all the information in better context for the lead character played by Jimmy Stewart. Now, it was directed by, of course, Hitchcock, written by John Michael Hayes, based on Cornell Woolrich's 1942 short story, It Had to Be Murder. Now, it was released by Paramount and an extremely talented class of actors. Again, James Stewart in the lead role. Actually, I named Jeffrey, which is kind of bizarre. Grace Kelly as the good femme fatale, or the underrated character actor Wendell Corey, the great character actress Tomba Ritter, and of all people as the heavy, no pun intended in the movie, Canadian, what was later hero Perry Mason of all the shows, Raymond Burr. Now, it was originally screened at the 1954 Venice Film Festival, and the movie was kind of bypassing the Oscars, only received 4 nominations, and it was eventually ranked as the number 42 movie on the AFI Top 100 list. Now it's in the United States National Film Registry and the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Now, multiple plots with one multiple set where basically Jim Jeffrey or Jeff Jeffries, LB Jeff Jeffries, who was suffering from a broken leg, becomes a voyeur of the different apartments that are within his vision with his binoculars and his trusted long lens camera. And he becomes obsessed with the various things he's been seeing. The young couple, the older couple that sleeps outside, the lady that has like an inquisitive dog, a dance expert, a Miss Lonely Heart, a musical creator, all kind of different people. And he notices across the way that the Raymond Burr character and his wife are not really getting along, and that turns up the heat literally and figuratively because in his rear window, looking on the courtyard at her apartment, the whole area is going through an extreme heat wave. Now, because this is Chelsea, the Grace Kelly character, who is what they call a buyer, an ingenue, she basically is a total opposite of Jeff. She's a woman about town. She's Grace Kelly, like in what he calls in fictional form, and we still wonder why they ever got together. But there's like a personal and intellectual heat between them that starts to grow when the mystery of why the salesman has been going out in the night after with his suitcase 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning, and after a fight with his wife, and then Jeffries' brain starts moving along, and he continue to think that there's a murder that has taken place involving the salesman. Now, the whole movie is perfect, and it's not because it's perfect. It's because every scene makes sense within the scene. Tumba Ritter playing the rehab lady, she drives forward a plot. The Wendell Corey, the investigator, that's a good friend of the Jeffries character. Grace Kelly making soliloquies about the fact that Jeffries doesn't want to get married, and she's basically saying, "I don't care what you're saying. I love you anyway." And like it all works together because it's a love story, it's a thriller, it's a film noir, it's a time period piece, and all the characters that he sees in different apartments have their own distinct personalities. And Hitchcock was a voyeur by trade as well. It was well known. He had obsession with women. And the fact is, most of the main women in Rear Window either are women that are under what you call uh, people are trying to hurt them, or they're being ogled, like Miss Torso, the dancer. Grace Kelly, the way she's filming this is almost pornographic. It's almost like you expect her, the lighting would be done to see through her dress. Because Grace Kelly at the time was one of the muses for Hitchcock before she became Prince Rainier's wife in Monaco. But Hitchcock was always a little bit strange. Now you can compare this how Hitchcock was going. We had Strangers on a Train, we had Rope, we had some very key movies. But for some reason, he put more effort into Rear Window than a lot of people basically gave him credit for. Now the movie is about 2 hours, and not a bit is wasted. Now it was one of the biggest box office hits of the time, cost about $1 million and made 36.8 million for 1955, 56 era. Tremendous amount of money. Now, this movie has been studied throughout the years by international critics and people like me. Um, like the enormous set of Paramount Studios was tremendous, and for Paramount to take the risk to build such a set so that Hitchcock could film it, and each one of the rooms or the apartments was built to scale, so he could film from far away and still have the inner workings of their going on. Now, another great thing as well, costume designer Edith Head have enormous talent. Did most of the major designs for the movie, and the appearance of the characters is very important. Like to tell Marita what you wear, like a workman-like dress. Grace Kelly's various outfits, I think there's 4 or 5. Wendell Corey, the way he's dressed, the various other characters. Now, it was one of the first movies also to talk about animal murder as a plot device. You'll have to see it to know what I'm talking about, because the dog, one of the main dogs in the movie, sees something he shouldn't have seen, and he ends up being murdered for it. And that's kind of a different thing, because Hitchcock once said, "I can murder somebody and there's no sympathy, but if a dog or an animal dies in a movie, it draws a little bit more sympathy." He said, "What if happened if Rin Tin Tin was knocked off, or Lassie, or whatever?" Now, it was probably one of the most positively reviewed movies of all time. On Rotten Tomatoes, 99%, with an average rating of 9.16. Now, the film has a weighted scale of 100 out of 100, so 18 of the most prominent reviewers of the last number of decades give this 5 stars. Now, it's not only a 5-star movie for presentation, the overall impact, because it's entertaining, it's thought provoking, it's not wasted. But the Academy Awards, it didn't get Best Picture nomination. Don't know why, in any form why, but it got director nomination, adapted screenplay, cinematography by the great Robert Burks, and sound recording, because the sound is very important here. There's an audio cue about 40 minutes in relation to one of the main characters being possibly knocked off, which starts the whole thing going. Now, National Board of Review, actually, Grace Kelly won for Best Actress. New York Film Critics Society, she won Best Actress. Hitchcock got second place. Edgar Allan Poe Awards, Hayes won Best Motion Picture Screenplay. And it's been put in numerous Hall of Fame throughout the year. So, the legacy of the movie, personally, I don't like Psycho as much as Rear Window, because I've never been a huge fan of some of the actors in Psycho. I think the wrong cast was in Psycho, in my personal opinion. But Rear Window, you had Jimmy Stewart, who was dedicated to the Hitchcock oeuvre, because he was in Hitchcock movies before. Grace Kelly was willing to take her, what he calls, debutante character to the next level. And everybody involved in the production, including Raymond Burr, because to play literally a heavy, it could have ruined his career, and it didn't ruin his career, actually. It put his respect on a different level. He later went on to do the Godzilla movie of all that, and led into Perry Mason and Ironside and all that. Um, for 30 years, I think 30 or 40 years after, he was one of the top TV actors of his generation. So if you have a chance to watch Rear Window, get the DVD, but the unedited version sometimes it shows up on Hollywood Suite. There is edited versions for certain what you call time constraints. I've seen versions of this around 98 minutes, 100 minutes, and it's terrible. But overall, like I said, you get a Jimmy Stewart performance at his best. Grace Kelly again, luminous, tremendous actress. Everybody else a great performance. Rear Window is a two coffee pot movie because you may want to pause and rewind. There's a lot going on in Rear Window. You have to look for the Easter eggs. You'll see what I mean. And if you never saw it for the first time, please give it a chance because on the first viewing you say, you know, this is a movie from 1954, 1955. What's in it for me? There's a lot in there. You cannot be stupid and watch Rear Window. You have to be a level of intelligence to appreciate all these successful creators that made it work. So on this COVID Thursday, the reason why I get inspired by Rear Window, I've been seeing an Hollywood Suite this week, and I've seen the movie about 155 times, and it will be 156 at the end of the day because I always have it on sometime. I've never watched Psycho 156 times because I don't know, man. You know, I'm a Technicolor guy. I've never liked 1960 black and white. I never have. The only thing I can put up with is In Cold Blood because that movie has to be in black and white. But that's talked about in previous podcast. So if you like what I'm saying, give me a like, subscribe, pass it on to your friends, and again, thank you for the support. We're nearing 80,000 page views on my YouTube channel. No monetization, no promotion other than the word of mouth. And thanks everybody. Have a good evening.